Hello, and welcome to Down in the Bunker. My name is James Merritt, and today I'm joined by the perspicacious James MacGregor. James, welcome, and thank you very much for joining us.
Hi, James. Thank you very much, and thank you for the kind introduction. As I told you a moment ago, I've no idea what perspicacious means, so I'm very grateful to be introduced with such an impressive adjective, even though the very fact I don't understand it probably means I don't embody it.
Pretty well, just for those that don't understand the word, it is a sharp, intelligent, and it has a profound understanding of many things, which I certainly think you fit with all the different roles and functions that you carry out across a diverse area. So, with that in mind, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
Thanks, James. Yeah, well, as I say, that's very kind of you. So I'm James MacGregor. I'm the founder of Ethical eDiscovery, which is a boutique eDiscovery services provider. I've been in the eDiscovery sphere for about 15 years now. I started off my career in the US. I was at TransPerfect, first of all, and then BDO for a while. And with them, I moved across back to the UK. And then I've worked at a couple of different service providers. Formerly, I was a managing director at Concilio before I went off and started my own practice. Outside of all things eDiscovery, I'm a dad to two young daughters. I'm an active volunteer with a few different charities in Farnham, in Surrey, which is where I live. And I know you're going to come on to my interests outside of work at some point later on, but I guess in terms of my true passion, it is improv. I do a fair amount of improv comedy. There's a team that I'm a part of that I perform with pretty regularly, and I use improv in all facets of what I do, and I'm a bit of an improv nerd.
That's cool. That's one thing I didn't know about you, but I did see that yourself and Amit took a trip to see some improv, I believe, when you were in Littlewood.
That's right. Yeah, we did. I've done a lot of improv schooling, and actually, me and Amit Pandit started it together. Probably 5-6 years ago. We did a class in London, and I really got the bug then, and have kind of pursued it pretty religiously since. When Amit and I were last in New York, we decided we'd go take another class, and so we went to Second City, which obviously was founded in Chicago, but they now have a big New York offering. And I try and do a bit of improv wherever I go, actually. Often I tie it in with an eDiscovery conference. When I was at Relativity Fest in Chicago 2 years ago, we went to go see some at Second City, the original one there. And when I was in LA not that long ago, I went to go check out the Groundlings as well. So yeah, it's it's not a cool thing to do. I recognize that, but I love it, and it's a big part of my life.
I don't think things need to be cool. I think it's certainly if it's interesting and it inspires you, I think it's always a worthwhile thing, having something that sort of keeps you going, certainly keeps your mind sharp. And if you can apply it to your work and personal life and things, then yeah, I think there's a purpose. It doesn't have to be cool. It's cool you do, right? So that should be the main thing.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. I really enjoy it.
Awesome. So you said you started your career out in the US. What led you there? And how did you fall into eDiscovery?
Yeah, sure. The classic question. No one who's in eDiscovery, or at least no one who started in it 15 years or so ago, did so intentionally. We all kind of fall into it by accident. For me, my path was an unusual one. So I did a politics and social policy degree at university, which qualifies you for nothing. So I came out of that with no real bricks. And I was pretty sure I wanted to work with my hands. So I started working in the construction industry, and I was trying to get a carpentry apprenticeship. And I had a company that was going to sponsor me for it. I was living in Cheltenham at the time. And that company was doing a big build for Grand Designs, the TV program. And in so doing, the project went massively over budget, and the company working on it fell apart. And so actually they went bankrupt, and thus my apprenticeship was scuppered. So I decided I was going to take a bit of time out, and I went traveling. And whilst I was traveling, I was actually in New Zealand at the time. I met a girl from Southern California, and one thing led to another. And before I knew it, I was off to Southern California, and I moved out there without any real skills or prospects. In fact, my first job in Southern California was landscape gardening. I used to stand in line at Home Depot, and I just get picked with random landscape crews. And I improved my Spanish significantly in that process, as you might imagine, though it's all since dissipated. Did that, and then whilst I was out there, I got a random job in PR, and that was in a building in Irvine, California. And there was one other English guy in that building who obviously I gravitated towards, partly because he was interested in watching football, proper football. And so it was a good opportunity to find an expat and do things that I missed from home. And he was pally with some of the people who were in the senior leadership of TransPerfect at the time. So when my ex and I were looking to move to the East Coast, we were in California for about 3 years. My friend connected me to some of the TransPerfect team there, and they got me a job over at TransPerfect in New York. And I was mainly on the language services side of things, but I was doing a lot of translation projects for, big contentious litigation exercises. So I started working closely with later eDiscovery team and thought, this is an interesting industry. And so, one thing led to another. And then I got my first kind of full-time role in it through a recruiter. And that was in New York. And I was doing eDiscovery in New York for about 4 or 5 years. And I've been in it ever since. As you know, James, once you get stuck in, you can't get out. And so I'm here.
Why would you want to? It's just a fantastic industry, right? So, so your first role, was that more of a project management-based role? Or was it business development? Now, obviously, you stayed on the sort of languages side of TransPerfect's area of operation.
It was a sales role. It was very much a sales role to start with, and it was kind of a classic boiler room mentality, cold calling different law firms for business. That was at the TransPerfect job. And then the way that the TransPerfect structure was at the time, and I don't know if it is still the case now, as the salesperson, you also were the project manager to some extent. I mean, you weren't necessarily hands-on with the tools, but it wasn't a question of selling the project and then moving on. You were responsible for the life cycle of the client relationship. Albeit much of my day-to-day was spent trying to find new business. Once that business came in, I then started to learn more about the mechanics of delivering the project by just staying involved. And then the next job that I got, which was for a company called UHY Advisors, which was then acquired by BDO, that was again in a sales, because we were a relatively small outfit. I mean, the company was big, but the forensic technology department was small. Again, everyone had to wear multiple hats. So it was definitely, I ended my career in this industry on the sales side, but have always, partly just by virtue of the companies I've worked at, had to do some of the consultancy and project management work as well. And I guess I'm an all-rounder, jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah. Which is, it's funny, in running your own business, you obviously need to have that jack of all trades mentality, because it's what you have to do with small businesses, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's one of the things that keeps it interesting, right? You know yourself. You get to do a little bit of everything, and I suppose the other reason why for me it was inspiring, why I always wanted to start my own business, is I think if you're selling something but you don't have complete control over delivery of it, then it can feel you're scared you're going to missell something to a client. You go in and you pitch and you say what you're going to do in order to do the work. And then based on that, the client trusts you and they give you a project. And then if you don't have control onto how to execute on what you promised, it feels like you're not entirely acting on what you said in order to get you the work in the first place. And so now, being in charge of your own destiny, you can now sell things the way you want to sell them, because you can deliver them that way as well. The challenge obviously comes because in reality, we could spend all of our time either selling the work or delivering the work. And when you're trying to wear both hats, that can become particularly challenging, especially because often the cycle is you go out and you sell for a while, and then all the projects roll in and you don't have an opportunity to sell. And then you're engaged on those projects and your pipeline starts to diminish, and then you've got to go back out and sell again. It keeps it interesting, but definitely keeps it challenging as well.
Which I guess there's another reason why we're in this industry. Keeping it challenging. I know something that I've always enjoyed with eDiscovery is every matter is different and therefore presents its own challenges. Is that something that you find interesting?
Yeah. I mean, I think first of all, it's one of those things that a bit like how you get into it in the first place. You kind of find yourself here randomly. You don't choose to get into the business. And then once you are here, at least in the early days, and I think it's still the case now, it's quite a small community. So you get to know the same people because it's quite niche. And often when you tell your mates or your family what it is you do, they've got no idea. But you build a special kinship with the other people that have a similar experience in the professional sector. And so I think that keeps you interested. And then the other thing that's interesting about it, occasionally you might be working on some quite high profile matters, and certainly over the course of my career I've worked on some pretty exciting stuff, but every project is fundamentally different, and so it is always a new challenge, and also partly because of the different constraints and personalities involved, every project can be quite stressful as well. You've always got a deadline that needs to be worked towards, and chances are you're only ever being hired because a client is obliged to hire you rather than because they want to hire you. And as a result, you're dealing with situations that people find themselves in, which are highly charged, highly stressful, and you have an opportunity to really help them out of a challenging situation if you can deliver a solution which is cost effective and efficient. But it's hard work doing that, and every time there's a new problem that you have to solve. And yeah, I suppose my relationship with eDiscovery has oscillated between finding it on occasions and then finding it incredibly stressful and frustrating on others. But I suppose, the fact that I'm still in it and I started my own business within it probably indicates that I like it, and I've no intention of ever actually deciding to break up with it.
Yeah, otherwise why choose setting your own fulfillment? No, the one thing that I find a challenge at the moment is I also have two young daughters. How are you finding the balance? Because I know you've got a really newborn with you now. How are you finding the balance of having to devote the time that you need as a father, while also having to devote the appropriate amount of time as you need to be as a founder of a business?
Good question. I mean, I think probably the short answer is I'm not really finding the balance. I think I'm probably failing on both fronts. But I guess there's a couple of key benefits. I'm fortunate in that I have a sugar mama. I've got a very successful, significant other who has a full-time job, which has allowed me to go off and start my own business. Because without a stable income, I don't think we'd be in a position to be able to do it. But because she's very good at what she does, it's given us an opportunity to do this. And then the payoff for that is, because it is your own business, you can have a certain amount of flexibility. And I know you're the same. I speak to you sometimes when you're doing the school run or you're picking the kids up. And, the fact that I can be available in the mornings in order to take them to nursery, and be available in the afternoons in order to pick them up from nursery as well, and then to do bedtime, bath time, etc. And then just because in the world that we operate in today, you don't have to be in an office from 9 to 5. I'm also free then to go back online at 8 o'clock at night when, touch wood, both of them are asleep, and then get on with some other work. And given that some of the people that I work with tend to be US based as well, that also works out quite well, because actually American clients, for them, 8, 9 o'clock our time is pretty good for them. So yeah, I mean, I would say that I could do with more hours in the day on both fronts, but actually being in charge of your own destiny in a way that you are, if you're an employee, I think does give you an opportunity to be a bit more flexible when it comes to being a working parent.
Good answer. I like it. And it's, it is that challenge, isn't it? You've got to make sure. Certainly, I feel if it hadn't been for COVID, I don't think I'd have been able to experience what I have to know over the last few years, and that's been able to spend the time with my daughters and see them grow up. I think I'd have still been in that rat race of having to get into central London every day, get up early, getting home late, and I'd really miss the time to spend with them. Whereas, I actually enjoy, as challenging as they can be, picking them up, feeding the tea, giving them a bedtime story, giving them a bath, putting them to bed. There's a couple of precious hours every day that I do get to look forward to.
Well, and I also think that in terms of putting things in perspective, if you're working with a case team as they're approaching a production deadline and tempers are starting to get frayed, dealing with a 3-year-old who doesn't want to put on her clothes for school can be quite good training for that same level of stress, actually. So I'm sure that there are things that you learn as a parent trying to negotiate 2 small children, which can be useful in your professional capacity as well.
That's right. I've never met a lawyer that has the same ferocity as my 2-year-old. So, yeah, I quite understand what you're saying. So, what is it that ethical eDiscovery are doing that you're excited about, or what is it that you're doing that really sort of excites you?
Sure. So, I mean, I started my business because having worked at big consulting for a long time, I wanted to start a firm that was more focused on the small to medium-sized market, because I think that, frankly, there's been a lot of consolidation by big e-discovery service providers in recent years. And that's meant that firms that were smaller to mirror their client size have been gobbled up. And so I sort of spotted an opportunity in the market to provide the level of bespokeness that similarly boutique law firms offer their end clients, and why they were formed. That's kind of the niche that I'm trying to focus on. And then with respect to why I called it ethical e-discovery, I mentioned I'm pretty active in the charity sector. I volunteer for a couple of organizations locally, and philanthropic work's always been a big motivator for me. And so the formation of my business, I want to have a strong grounding in doing either pro bono work or other work within the charity sector. And so there are a couple of clients that I'm working with at the moment around some human rights cases, whereby ultimately the software that I'm providing and my time is at a heavily discounted rate because they're causes that I believe in, and they're initiatives that I want to be a part of. And then there are other things that I do with my business by way of there's an initiative I'm working on at the moment, which is to work with some refugees in order to bring them and give them an opportunity to contract and work within an industry that perhaps otherwise they wouldn't be aware of. And I think, ultimately, again, the beauty of setting up your own firm, recognizing that we still need to make money, and we've got little mouths to feed, is that you can work on some of the projects and choose to work with some clients whose ethos directly mirrors your own. And so that's ultimately, touch wood, what I'd like my business to grow into. I'd like it to have a strong arm that purely works in the charity, philanthropic, pro bono sector.
That's amazing. I also find it incredible that you not only have time to obviously run your own business, be a father of 2, but then you've also got time to devote to charitable work as well. Do you have 28, 32 hours in your day?
Well, as I say, I'm very blessed in that my wife does an incredible amount in terms of supporting the family, and then also being able to help with our joint income. It's a challenge, right? You can't take on everything, and I think I'm also, and maybe this is the kind of motivation that empowers someone to start their own business in the first place. But I'm a bit of a yes man. If someone asks me, are you available for something, I'll say yes first, and then I'll check my diary and figure out other commitments later. And certainly when it comes to some of the charity stuff that I'm doing, there's a project at the moment, and I won't go into depth on it, but it's probably not something I should have taken on. But someone said, "Are you free to do this?" And before I could even think about it, I said yes. And so now I'm leading it. And ultimately, I think, don't get me wrong, I enjoy it. And it's incredibly challenging to balance that and other things as well. But I suppose I also think that it does, thinking about it from a selfish perspective rather than an altruistic one, it gives you an opportunity to grow your own brand and grow your own business as well. So, I mean, for example, I'm very involved with ILTA, the International Legal Technology Association, and I run their litigation special interest group. And that's a voluntary role, and I invest many hours doing various things with ILTA. But it's also a benefit for me professionally. I'm networking with lots of people who are prospective colleagues, clients, etc. And so whilst what I'm doing is voluntary, there are benefits which hopefully will yield some financial benefit at some point in the future as well. I think that with voluntary work, I kind of see it not separately as time that isn't also working. I think that particularly if you choose the right kind of volunteering, it can be an asset and something that accompanies your career and your business, rather than another job on top of your first one.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Still that. I mean, it wasn't. It's not just Ilse you've been involved with either, is it? You also helped form the UK ACEDS chapter. Why did you set that up at the time?
Yeah, so as I say, I started my career off in the US, and ACEDS was huge in the US at the time. And just as when I lived in New York, there used to be a whole number of professional organizations for eDiscovery professionals. Because the eDiscovery industry is so much bigger there were many more means for eDiscovery professionals to get together. And then when I moved to the UK, I mean, probably almost a decade or so ago now, I felt the absence of something like ACEDS very heavily, because it was a great opportunity for me previously to find new jobs, to share with peers and other organizations challenges that I might be facing, and to use conversations with them to find solutions to those challenges. I just thought there'd be a real merit in setting something up over in the UK. And well, there seemed to be. We got pretty good traction at the first few events, and I was president of that chapter for about 7 years. And yeah, really, really enjoyed it, and I'm still very friendly with many of the people who I volunteer with and work with along the way, and it's still going under new leadership. So yeah, I'm definitely proud of my involvement within it. Though, as I mentioned, I've recently changed my focus to ILTA just because it was time to do something a bit different, and I'd always quite involved with ILTA anyway. I had attended ILTACon for many years when I lived in the US. And so, yeah, was glad to take the opportunity to volunteer actively with them as they grow their international presence, which has been a real focus for them. This year, Tony McKenna is the ILTA president, and he's UK based, and that's the first ever international ILTA president, kind of giving their history since whenever ILTA was formed, which I'm going to get this wrong now, I think was sometime 1980s, 1990s.
Go on. So just before we wrap up, outside of eDiscovery, what is it that you like to do to let off steam, just as a personal hobby or something that you and the family like to do?
So, yeah, I mean, as you well know, with two small children, there is a limited opportunity to do many things that you might otherwise choose to do in terms of your own free time. That's not to suggest that I don't enjoy playing with my small children. I do, and that's very much a passion and a hobby. Albeit, I think what excites a 4-week-old and a 3.5-year-old is slightly different from how I would choose to spend my time if I were completely in charge. But yeah, my real passion is improv. So I mentioned this is something that I've done for five and a bit years now, and I do it in a few different guises. So I've trained with a few different improv schools. The Nursery Theatre was the one that I started with originally, and then the Free Association is one I've done some further training with, and Hoopla is the school that I'm most keen on, which is they're based in London Bridge, and they're the biggest improv school in London. Actually, I filmed an advert for them, which I don't know if it's available. If it is, I'll send you a link to it because it's quite funny. But yeah, that's a school that I'm actively involved in, and I have a group called School of Mock, and we rehearse most weeks. And there is a show coming up. I'm not going to publicly announce the dates just yet. But I'll definitely send you the details, James.
Thank you.
Because yeah, you should come along and check it out. But yeah, that's kind of the thing that I like doing the most, and the reason that I like doing it is it's such great escapism. So I'm sure you've seen Whose Line Is It Anyway, which was kind of very much the inspiration for why I wanted to get into improv. I always loved that show when I was younger. And it's kind of like the tenet of short form, which is the kind of improv which I like, is it's just about being silly, really. It's just kind of childish and messing about, and it requires really careful listening and then being able to respond quickly based on offers that you're given by other people that you're performing with. And so it requires incredible concentration, and it's just sort of pure silliness as well, which for me is in terms of escapism. So yeah, that's my. I'd go and sign up for Hoopla. You should do a course. I think I'd say everyone should do a course. I actually found out that Megan Suave, formerly of Allen and Overy, who's recently moved to OpenText, she's also a big improv fan, and she's got a regular group that she rehearses with. So I bet that we can find other eDiscovery improvisers And yeah, we should organise an eDiscovery improv jam. Like the equivalent of whatever it is, Law Rocks, that like rock band gig. We'll do an eDiscovery improv gig.
That sounds great. So you could make it charity based, raise plenty of funds for charity.
There we go. Yeah.
Sounds like you've got a new task for upcoming Legal Week in 2025.
That's my action. Yeah, I'll write that down. That's my takeaway from today.
Well, it's been a real pleasure having you on Down in the Bunker, James. I'd like to thank you very much for your time. It's been great to get to know you. And for everyone else, thank you very much for listening. And I hope to see you stop by next time.